Hi everybody and welcome back to the Tasting Room. It's a very special episode of the Tasting Room. I'm joined here by a good friend of mine. This is Sheldon. You can follow him on Instagram at Dread2Fro, am I right?
That is correct.
Alright. And today we're going to be doing a side-by-side with the Spot Series Irish Whiskey. Now you've seen me review these over the past number of years. I did the green spot very early on, the yellow spot not far after, and then I just recently have found the red spot, the 15-year-old. Now all of these are very, very different whiskeys here, and we're going to kind of do a side-by-side here and let you know what we think of them all.
So Tom, if I can state, there is one that we're missing, and it seems to be the unicorn, where you're not really going to see it often. It's kind of hard to come by. That would be the blue spot.
It would be the blue spot. Now the blue spot is a 7-year-old. So we've got, obviously these are labeled the 15 and the 12, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the green spot is a 10-year-old, and that's their flagship.
I think that's correct.
But the blue spot is the 7-year-old, and that's one that I've never been able to find, and really I've only ever been able to find these two until very, very recently when this one popped up at my local liquor store. So I am very hopeful that one day soon the blue spot will pop up, because, you know, I know you've been getting into the younger whiskeys sometimes here.
Generally, I feel like there's a lot more value and character in the lower years. You know, it's a misnomer to think that the older it is, the better it is. That's not always true, and in fact, it's often untrue. But people are afraid of the lower years, thinking that it's going to be unrefined, that it's going to be too harsh, that it's going to be too bitter. And it's so far from the truth, because distillers have kind of fine-tuned their processes, where I've had great 4, 6, 8-year scotches.
Absolutely.
Kilholman comes to mind.
Yeah, and even me being a bourbon guy. Yeah. I mean, there are some 6-year-old bourbons that'll blow you away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me it's the same thing, but just kind of turned around. Like I don't mind the younger whiskeys. Yeah. But the older ones are always more expensive, because there's less of it. I mean, it's more rare. There's more evaporation takes place, so there's less of it in the barrel to begin with, and of course the years they go into aging it. I mean it.
And there's a certain mystique to the older scotches, like,
sure enough,
you know, you watch TV and, you know, the big shots of drinking 25-year and 30-year and all of this, and, you know, it's all just image and perception, and it's not necessarily based in fact.
Well, some of it is and some of it isn't, but the point is that I've had some very old whiskeys that have really done very little for me. And I've had some young whiskeys and naturally cheaper whiskeys that have been real game changers.
That's important too. Now, when we talk about price point.
On the other hand, you know, I did have a 43-year-old Balvenie right out of the cask, and that was the greatest thing. I mean, I think I've said it before. That was like kissing the face of God.
That experience is unmatched, and I'm so jealous that. And I wasn't there next to you when that cask got tapped.
But that was beautiful.
That would have been amazing.
But anyway, let's start pouring these here so we can kind of evaluate the color.
Yeah.
I want to start with the red spot there. I'll start with the green spot.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, let's make sure we keep these in order here so we know what's what.
Yeah. Right away, you can see the color difference between the green and the red.
Now these aren't all just the same cask whiskey here either. That have just been aged a little bit longer. So this green spot here is not very descriptive. But the yellow spot here says it's got a 3 cask maturation. It's got bourbon, sherry, and Malaga cask.
Malaga.
I'm not familiar with Malaga.
I'm not sure. Gotta look into that a little bit.
Why don't you go ahead and kill that yellow spot there? I mean, it's pretty.
Didn't notice. Well, we'll
It's-
give you the rest of that. Yeah.
It's getting down there.
So how long have you had this yellow spot?
A long time.
It's been a while, right?
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And then what's that red spot say here?
So in the red spot, we're talking the triple cask maturation, bourbon, sherry, and Marsala.
Now I am familiar with Marsala wine casks.
It's an Italian wine, correct?
Is it Italian
I'm
or is
thinking of
it
food
Spanish?
Normally, I've gone to
I know
Italian restaurants.
it's a
you'll find
cooking
like
wine
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm not a wine connoisseur. I just know what I recognize.
Exactly. Thinking more in terms of food than the drink, but yeah, that's definitely something that we need to kind of dig into a little bit.
All right. Well, where do you want to start? The youngest or the oldest?
I say we start at the youngest and work our way up.
All right, I'm with you. Getting some light fruity notes, a little apple maybe.
You do get that edge from it being a younger Scotch.
It should
know,
be
it's
10
not-
years.
it's not-
It's not terribly young.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't like using this word when it comes to Scotch or any spirit generally smooth. It's not really that descriptive. But the opposite of that would be edgy a little bit. And I personally like that. I mean, it's one of the reasons I got into single malt Scotch in the first place, where it's not bland and prosaic. You know, there's a little something to it, and I am getting that out of this.
And by the same trait, that is the reason that I don't go for a lot of Irish whiskeys. I mean, they tend to me they tend to be a little bit thinner. They tend to be they're all triple distilled, and to me they seem to lose a lot of that flavor of the grain. You know, so you're really just relying on the cask maturation for the flavor. Now, it is also worth noting that the green spot here is bottled at 80 proof, while both the yellow and the red spot there are 92.
Tell you what, Tom, this doesn't really drink like an 80 proof whiskey.
No, it does have it does have a lot more flavor, a lot bigger punch.
Yeah.
Than you would expect from an 80 proof. Now, you know, Sheldon and I have both been drinking whiskey for a long time.
Long time.
And you know, it seems every time we talk about a whiskey, it's higher and higher and higher in proof, and then when we go back and we try a 40% alcohol or an 80 proof whiskey, there just seems to be not much to it. But this is one that I know for a fact that we both keep on buying. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, to me, it's absolutely one of the best Irish whiskeys out there.
I would agree. I do enjoy it, and it finishes well. That's the other thing. For it to be as young as it is, there's no bite on the back end. There's no harsh aftertaste.
Sure.
It finishes so even and so balanced. It really rounds out the experience for me. You know, I mean, it does. It's one of my favorite Irish whiskeys, if not my favorite.
Yeah, for me, I mean, both the Connemara with that peaty tone to it, and the Teeling.
The single malt.
The Teeling single malt.
Yes.
Both of them kind of compete with the green spot here for my go-to Irish whiskey spot.
Yeah. We're well past the Jamesons and the
Bushmills.
No,
those were the teenage whiskeys.
Yeah. And while there are merits there's not complexity. There's not.
Well, it's just, you know, and that's
it has a role.
That's where Irish whiskey gets a bad rap to me too, because I mean, you know, I go back to a Bushmills or a Jameson, and it's just so thin and so light and just I don't know. There's just not much there.
It's not for the whiskey drinker to appreciate it. There's a role for this drink, and as you've mentioned, it's in your younger years when you want to get from A to B, and that's fine. But you know, the more refined whiskey connoisseur, if we can call ourselves that, we're looking for a little bit more in the beverage.
Absolutely.
And there has to be something to it that's going to hold our interest.
Not that we're encouraging teenage drinking here. We're not.
Not at all.
Wait till you're of age, whenever that may be, wherever you're watching.
Nice save.
All right. So final thoughts on the green spot here.
Again, without going too much into the next two, I would say that the green spot is my favorite for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's pleasant on the nose. There's flavor and character all the way through, and it finishes very even.
Yeah, I mean, it does have, like you say, I mean, it has a nice full body for an 80 proof whiskey, and that's something that you don't find
it's very
even
unexpected.
in a lot of scotch.
It's very unexpected. And number two, while we haven't gone into it too much, it's got a very attractive price point. So it makes it a reasonable purchase where, you know, if you're enjoying it and you're able to go through the bottle fairly quickly, you have friends over, you're drinking, you can replenish the supply without a lot of pain.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I've brought to gatherings before, and I don't feel, you know, even to people who do still sit and shoot Jameson shots.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, there's a nifty story that goes along with the Spot Series whiskeys. And yeah, I mean, it's the you'll notice on all the bottles the Mitchell and Sons is the maker here, and and if you read the story back in the 1800s, the Mitchell family who lived, you know, down the street from the Jameson distillery would. They were in the confectionery wine business, you know, so they did fortified wines, you know, ports and things,
right?
You know, sherries, and what they would do is they would take their empty wine casks, load them up on a horse-drawn carriage, and take them up the street to the local Jameson distillery, where Jameson was still selling their new make spirit. And then they would take the Jameson and they would age it in their ex-wine casks.
Really? And
it gives it that extra flavor and aroma and all of this stuff that it's getting from those ex-fortified wine casks.
And this is a common practice today when we talk about single malt Scotch. We're talking about sherry casks and bourbon casks.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
This is a very common practice right now.
Yeah, I mean, bourbon, you know, and when you talk about the totality of whiskey, I mean, bourbon is fairly new to the scene, but
yes.
I mean, but a bourbon cask by nature they can only use once for bourbon. So I mean, Kentucky and America really has all of these excess
untold
casks that have been used once to age bourbon. And they can never be used again. So a lot of them make their way over to Ireland and Scotland to be used to age their spirit, because you know Scotch and Irish whiskey can use casks any number of times.
That speaks a lot to sustainability of the process, because you know the bourbon industry is going to keep churning out these casks, so there'll never be a shortage when it comes to Ireland and Scotland and the maturation of the spirit, which is a beautiful thing, because especially when we start talking about spirits like the Green Spot, where we're using multiple casks to age, you got to get these casks from somewhere.
Sure.
And so now we have them coming in on a regular basis. I know certain Scotch manufacturers, certain Scotch distilleries, they spend millions of dollars to capture these casks because they need to.
Well,
get
I
that
mean,
production.
they're pre-seasoned with all
yeah.
of that flavor
Yeah.
of the bourbon or of the sherry, even the port cask.
So as you and I are both Scotch drinkers, we see more and more bourbon cask aged scotches, and I have to think that's a supply concern, where it's like not a concern, but you have so many barrels. Why not age your product in a bourbon cask?
Right. I mean, you're getting that extra flavor.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So, without further ado, we'll move on to the yellow spot here, which we said earlier was aged in, and I'm cheating, bourbon, sherry, and Malaga cask, which I'm guessing is some kind of a wine or a fortified wine. I'm not entirely certain.
We really got to dig into that because it's very interesting that it's this kind of cask. Obviously, this is a genre that is being used for aging and maturation.
Right. Well, it's one that I've never seen before either. I mean, and I've seen, there's been a number that I've had to look up over the years, like Whistle Pig is a Canadian rye, and they've done a whiskey aged in French Sauterne can. I mean, I didn't know how to pronounce French Sauterne, until I looked it up. But it's a very, very rare wine.
I've never heard that until you just said it. Right now is when I've heard of a
So after we're off film here, we're gonna look up Malaga cask and see what that actually is.
That'll show up in future episodes,
absolutely,
no doubt. So this is the yellow spot.
So big nose here on the yellow spot. I am getting some grain here.
I am as well.
Which is strange for an Irish whiskey.
Yeah, but it balances well with the sherry notes.
Sure.
That we're getting off the top. It's
there is certainly a little fruit in there. I mean this
nose is what
this almost has a nicer nose than the green spot.
I would agree, and I would say that it's the nose that initially got me interested. The yellow spot is the first of the series that I had. And without going into too much detail, I happened to be at an Irish pub, and it was right after St. Patrick's Day. I was on an Irish whiskey kick, and I'd never had it before, so I wanted to try it, and the bartender recommended the yellow spot. And we'll go more into detail as we move forward, but the nose captured me right away. And it put me into, me being a Scotch guy for 25 years, it put me into the mindset of some of the high quality Speyside that I've had in the past. So it really had a lot of promise and a lot of potential at the nose. And we'll talk more about that as we go.
Yes, indeed.
You say this is a 92%.
This is a 92 proof, okay. and you do at the very end of the palate you do get that peppery bite that you would get from a higher proof whiskey, but there's really, and this is the problem that I had with the yellow spot right off the bat. I mean, it starts off kind of fruity on the palate, it's there, and then it just kind of disappears, and it's gone. And it's like, I mean, this is a $40-$50 bottle here. This one is $99. This is a $100 bottle of whiskey here.
Possibly more nowadays due to
tariffs. It could well be. I mean, I bought this bottle. This is my first and only bottle of Yellow Spot. This is my 5th or 6th bottle of Green Spot.
That says a lot. It says a lot.
And I didn't buy this one too far after this one. I tried the Green Spot. I absolutely loved it, and then I said, "Oh, there's the Yellow Spot? Okay, well, I'm buying that next."
It's twice as much, so it must be twice as good, right?
Well, not necessarily, as you and I have both come to know.
Yeah, that's a bad assumption.
Right. I mean, it's older, it's rarer, so therefore it's more expensive. But that does not always mean that it's better, and that's why on the tasting room, when I mean, I know we're not putting a rating scale on these before on these right now because I've rated them all before, but I mean, that's why I don't rate whiskeys based on their value for the money. I rate them just based on merit, what's in my glass right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've had some $12 whiskeys that were absolute garbage, and I've had some $12 whiskeys that blew me away.
And on the opposite end of that,
but that $12 whiskey that blew me away, I'm gonna rate the same as the $200 whiskey that blew me away.
And on the same, on the same scale there, one of my favorite spirits of all time, it originates at a 16 year. So I figure if the 16 year is great, the 23 must be better.
Lagavulin.
No. You got the first letter right. It's the Longmore.
Ah, the Longmore.
Longmore.
How can I forget the Longmore?
The Longmore 16 is my top 3 whiskeys.
That is a beautiful whiskey, and I thank you. And I thank you for the introduction of that whiskey.
I share it with everyone. It is that amazing. However, I had a 23-year cask strength, and it was nothing short of disappointing. At $188, I bought it for myself. I treated myself for Christmas one year. And I went out and I bought this bottle, and in fairness, it wasn't the bottle that I wanted. There was a 22 non-cask strength, which was around 48%.
So what was that watered down to?
The cask strength?
Yeah. No, obviously the cask strength is not watered down.
Yeah, the cask strength,
what
the cask strength was
your
around
22?
58%. The 22 was around, I'm trying to draw from memory, I want to say maybe 48%.
Okay.
Which is in the pocket.
Yeah, that's kind of in the ballpark that you would expect.
So that's the one that I wanted, but the website was misleading, and when I got to the liquor store, it wasn't there. So I settled for the 23 cask strength. I'm not a big cask strength guy, but it's Longmore. It's Longmore. It's 23. It's got to be awesome. It was not awesome. It was very harsh. It was very bitter. There were not a lot of notes. And I'm not a guy that adds a lot of water to my whiskeys, even the higher proof. But this one, I literally had to not only water it, but I actually had to add a cube or two to dry. I mean, it was a bad experiment all the way around. And at $188, I was not happy.
No, I bet not.
So the moral of the story is,
as much as I'll rate a whiskey, dram for dram, I am never happy when I have to pay $150, $200 for a whiskey and it turns out to be a flop.
Yeah, that was hard. So the moral of the story is, even though the yellow spot is twice as much as the green spot, the yellow spot falls flat.
It ain't worth your money.
It's not. Now I will, as much as we're not fans, I don't believe in alcohol abuse, so I will finish my pour. But I have to say,
well, it's not bad. It's not offensive. It's just a little disappointing.
The way I look at it,
especially when it's got such a nice, robust, flavorful nose.
And you know what? If I can continue my story, because I didn't want to follow through and spoil the ending, but I'm at this Irish pub. I have my yellow spot. I'm intrigued by the nose, and as I drink it, with every sip I'm losing interest because there's just nothing there. And I found it so confusing because the nose was so big and so bold and so promising. It reminded me of a lot of Speyside single malt scotches. I just knew that the palate and the finish were going to be equal, and they were not. This is probably, in my humble opinion, one of the most imbalanced whiskeys I've ever tried, because it's set such a high level at the nose, and it really tapers off. like severely.
Hmm.
So, is it the worst that I've ever had? It's not. Is it drinkable? Can I enjoy it if it's there? Perhaps.
Well, it's absolutely drinkable in my opinion. It's just,
But
it's not going to be my first choice, and I'm certainly not going to buy another bottle of it at the price tag that it's going for.
I mean, you've had this one for a couple of years.
A number
You just
of years,
finished
yeah.
it, and mainly, because we went through the review, it makes sense. But this is, I dare to say, this is not a go-to. This is nothing
for sure.
that you're considering
For sure.
when you want to pour.
Right.
So I went ahead and I finished the yellow spot, and I have to say, no worse for wear, but at the same time, I could have done a second green spot over the
Sure
yellow.
enough.
So I mean,
And you know what? Fortunately we do have green spot, and as soon as we finish this green spot, there's going to be another green spot following. But
absolutely.
as you saw when we poured, this is the end of the yellow spot, and yeah, we're not going to go back for that one. We're just going to call that one what it is, and we're just going to play it home.
For all the veterans.
As you can see, I'm a little rusty.
Little freestyling. Nothing wrong with that.
That's all right.
Little improvisation.
Horn's a little cold, but you know what? The whiskey wasn't that good. So we'll take it down and we'll say goodbye. Meanwhile, now this is one that you have not had before.
I've not had it before.
This is the Red Spot 15-year-old.
In fairness, I've only recently even seen it at my
Oh, you did
particular
find
store. I did find it.
Okay.
I did see it.
All right, so
but I never
this
tried.
one is circulating a little bit more. Then I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
What I'm not excited about is the price tag, because I believe I paid about $160 for this, and I was not happy about. I mean, I'm just a poor old boy from the South Side here.
It's fair.
I mean, I've got some expensive whiskeys in my collection, but I don't hit them up very often.
And to think that an Irish whiskey, traditionally $20-$30 bottle.
Yeah, maybe like we say, maybe a little bit more nowadays. Because of tariffs.
But $160 for an Irish whiskey blows my mind. I am not accustomed to that.
It blew mine too, but
I just told the story of a $188 single malt Scotch from the Highland region of Scotland, and in comparison to what's out there, that's a drop in the bucket.
Right, but I tell you what caught my attention though. I mean, I've never seen this before on the shelf. I know there's 4.
Yeah.
And there's some variations of the green spot, but I haven't gotten into those. But I mean, generally speaking, there's 4. There's a blue, a green, a yellow, and a red, and in that order they go up in age.
Yeah.
And so I've never seen the red spot before. B, the green spot is one of my all-time favorites. Now, what had me a little hesitant is that going up in age so far has not done me any favors.
A little disappointing.
It had been a little, so going another 3 years up, I was a little bit hesitant, but then I saw, Marsala wine casks. Wow, that's something that I've never seen before.
And
At least not that I can remember.
The triple maturation is interesting in and of itself, but to bring in, American spirits with Italian or Spanish, we're figuring it out.
We don't know what kind of sherry cask. It just says sherry.
Yeah.
So yeah. We don't know.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of the Marsala.
Sure.
There's potential. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, the sherry maybe I guess we can assume is Spanish.
Oloroso perhaps.
Could be Oloroso, could be Madeira, could be Pedro Jimenez. Who knows?
But I gotta say, Tom, I think you've tainted my train of thought a little bit, because it never occurred to me that we went from a 10 to a 12 and we're disappointed. So is the possibility that by going up 3 more years, there's even more disappointment to be had? It never crossed my mind until now.
Well, and here's the thing, folks. We poured this in glass, but this man here has never tasted this whiskey yet. This is his first time. I've already, you've seen me, I've already reviewed this one, and every time, before I officially review a whiskey, I spend an hour or 2 with it in the glass, just picking out the notes and picking out, what I like, what I don't like about the whiskey. So this here is going to be an untainted, what do you call it?
A raw and unbiased review.
Sure.
Based on the fact that I'm not an Irish whiskey guy. I've become slowly but surely, and I have opinions on the green and the yellow spot. We've not had the blue spot, and I'm sure that'll show up in some future
I hope so.
But the red spot is so intriguing to me on a positive and a negative side. Positively, it's a 15-year. The Mitchell family, they've proven that they know what they're doing. And maybe they took some chances with the yellow spot that we just don't agree with. It's not a terrible product. It's just something that I'm not a fan of.
So something happened and it just disappears on it. It's got it's got a beautiful nose.
So now
it just pulls a Houdini on the palate.
So now we're talking about literally a tiebreaker. We have a great experience, we have a less than stellar experience, and then the top of the line, the 15-year. What is there? What can we expect? I have no idea. So I'm really interested to get into it.
Well, let's find out.
Let's find out. Yeah, I'm very interested to get into this, because I don't know that I've had a 15-year. First of all, because I'm so new to Irish whiskeys, I wasn't even aware that they were aged like single malts. Like you could find a 10-year, a 12-year, and a 15-year.
Oh, sure.
I'm thinking that a lot of them are blends, which you don't normally age. So I'm learning as I go.
Well, in a blend, you'll age it, but if you're gonna date stamp it like with a 10 or a 12 or a 15 or a 6 or an 8-year stamp, it's got to be the youngest.
The youngest
in that blend.
Correct.
So that's why you'll see a lot of blended whiskeys that don't have that age stamp on them, because they don't want you to know that they took this 13-year-old whiskey and rounded it out with a 2-year, and now they've got to put a 2-year-old stamp on it.
I've read articles that some of the whiskeys that go into blends are anywhere between 6 months and a year.
And it could well be. I've had some quarter cask whiskeys that were phenomenal, but only aged for a couple of months. And if a quarter, so a normal whiskey cask is what, 53 gallons
Yes.
for the barrel?
53, 55.
So your quarter cask is a quarter of that, or
12, 13.
roughly about 12, 13 gallons. And the idea behind aging in a quarter cask is it's smaller, so more of the whiskey is in contact with the wood, so it ages faster, if you will. So I mean, you couldn't call a 1-year-old whiskey a 4-year-old whiskey, but that 1-year-old whiskey would be akin to something that had been in a cask for a few more years, because it had more contact with the wood. More of the whiskey had moved in and out of that barrel. So anyway,
As you're talking, and I'm absolutely paying attention, but I'm kind of.
I'm glad one of us is.
I'm getting into the nose of this, and it's a little bit more subtle than the
yellow spot, sure enough. But there's you get that wine.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the Marsala that we're smelling, but
I have to believe that it is, because a sherry is a fortified white wine, and I'm getting some darker fruit notes here. I'm getting some plum,
some berry, like
blackberry,
and
I mean it is definitely a little more subtle. It's not quite as in your face, but
I mean, am I crazy? I'm getting a little dark chocolate.
Oh no, you're not crazy. Well, about this.
Fair enough. There's a lot of earthiness to it as well, which is something that I appreciate. Earthiness is something that's hard to replicate with, manufacturing processes. It is or it isn't, and this one is. It's giving me some very natural and organic notes, which I can appreciate. Time to dive in.
Yeah, it's got some body.
This one's also 92%, correct?
It sure is.
Okay.
92 proof, rather.
92 proof, correct. Thank you.
You all knew that. You knew it. Boy, you just chew on that, huh?
I'd say it's got a bite tantamount to the 12, but I'm getting a little bit more flavor.
It's got a little bit of pepper in there, but maybe not as much as the yellow spot had on the finish, but it's definitely got a bold mouthfeel, wouldn't you say?
Agreed. And
a lot of those dark fruits in there.
The reference to the pepperiness is very. It's an interesting statement. It's a very compelling statement, because I'm getting the pepper, but it's not overwhelming, and it's certainly not negative. It's actually less peppery, more spicy, I would say. It's.
Definitely, for me, it strikes a good balance with the nose. I mean, it holds true with them darker fruit notes.
Yeah.
It reminds me. I still get a little bit of that spice on the nose.
It reminds me of a well-aged Maduro cigar. With a lot of that spice and a lot of that.
I can absolutely agree with that. I wonder how this would pair with one of those.
I would say, for the cigar smokers out there, I'm maybe 2-3 years in, but I've done some deep dives. If you're talking about a full-bodied Connecticut wrapper or a Maduro, which by definition is more of a full-bodied wrapper, I would say that this, of the three, promises to be the best pairing with one of those full-bodied cigars.
For sure, of the three, absolutely.
Yes.
And he represents a brand called Black Star Line.
Black Star Line Cigars out of Chicago.
He is not the owner, but But he knows the owner well, and
Yes.
I've met him myself. Great guy.
Yes.
And I've had a few of his cigars. Just that Maduro red cigar.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And not to delve too much off the topic, but with Black Star line cigars, which we're referring to as the El Milagro line, where there's a Habano wrapper and a Maduro wrapper. We were originally produced out of El Titan de Bronze in Miami, Florida. We have recently moved manufacturing to a Nicaraguan plant with Aganorsa Leaf. So Aganorsa Leaf has a Connecticut wrapper, which traditionally is a mellow to medium wrapper. But Aganorsa has done something different with their process, where their Connecticut actually goes medium to full. That would be the Warwich that we smoked in the past. And even though it's got a lighter wrapper, it is a spice bomb. And what I'm thinking is that cigar pairs very well with the red spot, just because of the spiciness and the earthiness, the combination of the two with undertones of those dark berries and chocolate.
You smell that, folks? It smells like an experiment in the near future.
I see it happening. Because any cigar smoker knows that a good cigar is only made better with a good pairing. And this red spot promises to be a great pairing with several cigars that I'm familiar with, not least of all Black Star line cigars. This is a very interesting pour because
It's got a lot going on, doesn't it?
here's the thing with 15-year-old whiskeys in general. The normal school of thought is the higher the age, the smoother it gets. But in my opinion, the more prosaic it gets. Sometimes.
Okay.
I'm talking non-cask strength, where you're in the 43 to maybe 48 proof or percent ABV range.
Kind of right in the ballpark.
You know what I mean?
For your European whiskeys.
But this red spot, I would say at 92 proof, drinks like a very well-made 10-year scotch.
Right,
And
now,
I
now
say
as you
that.
say that here, I'm noticing this again. And now, mind you, this has been sitting here in open air, oxidizing for a little bit longer. Now, tell me this nose hasn't opened up more than when you first put your nose on the 12-year.
I'm getting different notes. I'm getting a little bit more.
It's changed.
The
It's developed.
The fruit is more pronounced.
You know, I mean, for me, I'm getting more of the spice here. I'm getting some of that allspice.
I was going to ask, what spices particularly?
It's pepper, allspice, maybe even just a smidge of a hint of nutmeg.
I can't believe you said nutmeg. I'm thinking nutmeg the whole time. My background is Jamaica. I'm born in Chicago. My entire family is from Jamaica, and nutmeg features nutmeg and allspice features prominently in Jamaican cuisine. Anyone that's ever had curried goat or spiced bun or something along those lines, you'll get a lot of nutmeg, a lot of allspice, caraway seed, which lends itself to licorice in a lot of cases. I didn't want to say it. I was waiting for you to say it. I'm like, he's gonna say nutmeg. I'm expecting him to say nutmeg, and you said it because I'm getting the same thing. As you say it, I'm getting more of the spice, but it's still very compelling. The dark fruit notes that present themselves.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in the brief time that we've been sitting here and talking about this, when we first picked up this 15-year-old, this red spot, rewind the tape, we said that the nose wasn't quite as impressive as the yellow spot. And, I'm sitting here now and I say, no, it's bolder.
Yeah. Over the little bit of time that we've been discussing it and going back and forth, it has changed. And I would say it's the only one that has changed over time. I mean, we sat with both the green spot, the yellow spot.
Now mind you, it's been sitting in the glass here with us longer, but both of us have sat for hours with these two whiskeys.
Indeed.
So, I mean, let's just for the sake of honesty. So what do you say? If you had to rate these 1, 2, and 3, what would you say? What's your number one? I
would feel that
price point not an issue here.
I don't consider price point because
every one of these is $1.
I've been gifted the opportunity to try all three in one sitting, and it's a rare thing. You go to a bar, you may not find all three. So for us to sit here and try all three in a row, it's a great thing. It's a blessing. But price notwithstanding, I have to say, and the ageophiles out there are going to crucify me for this, but I still say
go with the green spot.
My number one is the green spot.
All right, well that's my number 2.
My number one is the green spot.
I am adoring the red spot.
The red spot is a close second, and honestly, it's a challenging choice between the two. But it's like the red spot is a combination of the green and the yellow. I know it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. For me, it's just so far ahead. I mean, it's got so much more boldness, so much more spice, so much more of that dark fruit. I don't know. From the minute I tasted the red spot, I was in love, and I wasn't in love with the price tag, mind you.
Yeah.
But I absolutely am digging the red spot.
Yeah.
For me, that's my number one, and the green spot is a close second. I think if there's one thing that we can agree on today, it's that neither of us will be buying another bottle of the yellow spot.
If ever. I've never bought a yellow spot. I've bought one pour, and it was a decent pour. So I had time to go through it, and I sat there by myself at the bar, and I had a chance to analyze the yellow. And at the end of the day, I realized that the yellow spot was not for me. Price point notwithstanding. So to kind of summarize, I would say that me being a green spot guy, you being a red spot guy, we're not really trashing the other's opinion. It's so close. Sure. And because it's a personal thing, and it is a preference thing.
Well, that's the great thing about whiskey, though. Yeah. It's always a preference thing. I mean, you go down to Kentucky, you go to Scotland, you go anywhere, and you go visit a distillery, and they say, what's the best whiskey? Well, it's the one that you like to drink.
Yes, but between the red and the green, it's neck and neck. I'll admit that. But can we agree that there is the possibility that the 7-year blue spot blows the 3 out of the water?
There is always a possibility, and you know what, folks, I am anxious for that episode because, damn it, I want to try to.
I have to have it. I have to have it.
We will find it.
I don't know what it's going to take.
We will find it.
We're going to have to travel to Morocco and catch it at a duty free. I don't know. Whatever has to happen.
I live in the suburbs. He lives in the city, and he knows the whiskey spots, and we're going to find it. We're going to find it.
We're going to find it. Somebody knows.
But until then, I want to thank you all for joining us today. If you stuck through to the end, bravo. If you like this video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not already a member of my channel, please hit that subscribe button down below. And then after you do, don't forget to ding that little bell next to the subscribe button and make sure you get notifications of new videos that come out. New videos come out on the weekends, and I would hate for you to miss one, so go ahead and do that for me, and I will see you again next week, right here on The Tasting Room.
Enjoy.